I'm going backwards, I guess, reviewing the OnePlus Nord N30 5G first, and now this. But what's funny is that this has the same processor, but the OnePlus Nord N20 5G is not the same phone. And that's what makes this phone weird. The OnePlus Nord N30 and Nord N20 are very similar, but only in a few ways, one being the same processor. But the N20 only has 6GB of RAM. The N20 also runs Android 12, while the N30 runs Android 14. There's oddly so many differences from the N10, N20, and the N30 that it's kind of impressive. But focusing on the N20, this is a plastic and glass design. Yes, I have a screen protector on, but the glass above the display is extension up by a company called Shot. Okay, anyways, the front has a hole punch in the corner for the front camera and a fingerprint scanner in the screen. Yes, the N10 had it on the back, this one is under the screen, and the N30 has it on the side for some reason. And yes, this means two things. One, we get an always-on display, which is not on the N30, but also this is a 6.43-inch 1080p OLED panel that runs at 60Hz. Again, not on the N30 or the N10. Going from 90Hz on the 10 to 60Hz on the 20 to 120Hz on the 30 is an odd choice and really shows how important that is. More on that in a little bit. But the screen is fairly bright, going up to 650 nits and sits at about 450 nits for manual brightness mode. The plastic actually doesn't look too bad with a microphone on the top, power button on the right side, and the left has the volume buttons as well as the SIM card / SD card combo tray. The bottom is where the other budget staple is, the headset jack, as well as the microphone USB-C 2.0 port that charges at 33 watts for some reason, and the only loudspeaker. Yes, this is one of two phones with a single speaker in the N series, meaning that the earpiece is just an earpiece, no stereo feel or even an attempt. The Nord N10 and N30 have it, the N20 doesn't. I honestly don't know why. Even the cheaper N20 SE has dual speakers. Just like the others, the vibrating motor is weak and feels budget, and is expected. Then for the back, we have a thin plastic back with an iPhone OG design, I guess, with the soft touch back that is nice-ish. There's a hole for the flash and monochrome sensor, as well as the macro and main camera being these big camera bumps. There's no ultra-wide camera like the N10 for some reason. Inside the phone, we get the Nord N30 processor, the Snapdragon 695 5G chip, this time with 6GB of RAM as opposed to 8 in the N30. We also get 128GB of UFS 2.2 storage, but again, it is expandable. This 6.3-inch tall phone is actually the smallest of the three phones, as well as being the lightest at 173 grams, and it does feel kind of light. Lastly, we have 5G, no ultra-wideband of course, but we do get Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 5.1. Powering the phone, we get a 4,500 mAh battery cell, which is nothing to write home about, especially given that this phone is fairly new condition-wise. Charging is great, but also kind of weak. 33 watts sounds great, no wireless charging here, but 15 minutes gave me 30% from 1%, which sounds good, but at 30 minutes I was at 55%. 50 minutes to go from 1 to 80%, and 88 minutes for a full charge, which isn't really bad for a 100% battery, but the lower is fair in terms of battery charging speed. Now the weird part is that this phone feels slow. It feels unusable to me at times, but somehow I ended up using this phone for over a week. The performance isn't great, with some weird glitches happening in some apps as well as slow operations, but not slow enough that apps like YouTube are unstable. That said, there are moments where this phone would just be slow to react from sleep, and the face unlock was hit or miss, with the fingerprint scanner being horrible with the screen protector on. All of this reminds you that this is a budget phone. And this continues to the camera set. The front camera is a 16 megapixel sensor that looks okay. No focusing and no 4K video. Just 1080p at 30 frames per second, unlike 1080p 60 frames per second on the N10. There are dual 2 megapixel cameras, just like the N10 and the N30, being a monochrome 2 megapixel camera and a 2 megapixel macro camera, but the 64 megapixel camera is the main attraction here, not being optically stabilized, but it does shoot 1080p 30 frames per second, just like the Nord N30, but unlike the 4K 30 frames per second on the N10. It's weird that this happens, but the inferior processor on the N10 supported 4K, while the Snapdragon 695 only supported 1080p. Honestly, it's very strange. But there are moments where the camera looks good, but also, It's not great, but it does work. I would say that it is mid-range performance, but not a camera that I would want all the time. And I know I'm not alone in this because the person that owned this phone before was fine with the processor, but asked me why the camera is so bad. So it's not just me. This section, though, is literally me. And like I've said, this phone is not terrible. That crown still goes to the 1 year newer, but somehow worse Samsung A15 4G and 5G. Instead, we get a phone with some hiccups, but overall works if you're not in a rush. See, the gaming is, well, this. Lighter games are okay, but heavy games are not meant for this phone, but that's fair for the pricing and nature of the phone. Not the MSRP of $300 though, but under $100 is more like it, because it does feel like a burner phone. The lack of a high refresh rate screen feels strange, but having that on the N30 doesn't really make too much of a difference. Does the 6GB of RAM versus 8GB matter? I would say no, because it feels the same when opening and maintaining apps, and honestly I feel like 6GB is the sweet spot for RAM, but of course having more is always better. 128GB of storage is fine too, especially with it being slower and having an SD card slot. But this truly is a phone to get you by, and for that, I'm out. Now, I get it, budget phones need to exist. At $300 or about $13 a month for 2 years when financed, this is too much for too little. For $300, I can grab a used flagship phone, and to avoid sounding like a broken record, I will never understand how people think that under $500 is budget pricing, but a $500 used Samsung S24 Ultra isn't. It'll help you get by, and it isn't miserable, but it's definitely not your only option, so see what's out there. Should you buy this phone? Probably not. And that's my review of the OnePlus Nord N20 5G, a strange, slow phone. But what do you think? Do budget phones have a reason to exist, or are they just e-waste and R&D money suckers? Let me know, and as always, thanks for joining the 1%, and thanks for watching.